It's interesting that to find out that many of the people who are homeless, who live on the streets, who have a variety of difficulties, including addictions and mental health problems, are not receiving any form of government support. They're not on income assistance. Many would be eligible for disability, but their illness is such that they won't go into offices to make applications. They won't show up for appointments. It's just sort of it's part of the illness. So I suppose when they commit an offense and we have them in court, they're kind of a captive audience, and we can actually process, or the staff can process their applications there that day, and give them an emergency allowance, take them to a place to stay that night, get them into a hotel room, and start getting them sort of stabilized. This has never been possible in the traditional court system. People are told to go to the income assistance office, even across the street, and make an application, and then they're told to come back 3 weeks later, and so on and so forth. So that was one of the big changes that we've made. The assertive case management teams, there's 2 teams. Each of them has 5 members, 2 probation officers, a Vancouver Coastal Health Justice Liaison worker, who's usually a social worker, a MIA financial worker, and the 2 teams have a different makeup, but within their makeups they have the Vancouver Police Sergeant, Native Court worker, housing support worker, victim services worker, and a forensic psychiatrist. And they manage, those 10 people, they manage 100 people at a time in an assertive case management approach. In addition to that, we also are working closely with the Vancouver Intensive Supervision Unit, VSU, which has 70 clients who are very high needs people. One can imagine that over time, most of them will be serving community court sentences because they serve people of the profile that we deal with in the downtown east side. It is a criminal court, and people do go to jail. And it's interesting, one of the challenges is that some of the people who have the lengthy records would rather go to jail than deal with all of this problem solving. I've had sort of interesting discussions as recently as yesterday with a fellow who I said, you know, based on what I've been told, I think that you can be helped. And he said, just get it over with. I want to go to jail. And I couldn't talk him out of it, although he is on an order once he gets out of jail, which he was really mad about. Called me some bad name because I think the community interest required that. But people do go to jail. The difference is that what we want to do for the folks who have these high needs is make certain when they get out of jail that we pick them up. We then get them into housing and get them into the treatment programs they need and give them the support that they require. Jail, in other words, is for most of the people that we'll see is not the end, that's not the outcome. That's basically a timeout until you come back to the community. The chances of a person who has a mental disorder and or an addiction who goes to jail for even a couple of months, when they get out, the chances of them committing a criminal offense within the first 24 hours is quite high. They've got no money, they've got nowhere to live, they basically are just sort of put out on the street. And they tend to gravitate back to their old haunts and their old ways. Now, we can't stop everybody from doing that, but I think we've got to be able to provide support to people when they're released from jail. The whole community court project is being evaluated by Simon Fraser University Criminology. They've got a large contract. They're doing a detailed analysis on how the court's doing. We'll be getting regular reports from them, and statistical reports, as well as doing interviews in terms of the acceptance in the community. So that's my overview on community court. Now, as I mentioned, we've been in business now for 18 working days. The very first day we opened, we didn't know what to expect. And we had about 18 people. I think they were all in custody. And since then, we've had days in which there's been 15 to 20 has been the average people that have been coming into the court. So we've been very busy. The number of cases that are dealt with, resolved on the first day, is probably about half which is unheard of in the traditional court system. The Crown seems to always have the police report particulars ready to hand to the accused lawyer or the accused, like, right at the beginning. We haven't had any delays for the purposes of that, which is, as the attorney mentioned, is often causes several appearances. The triage team has been doing assessments on about half of all of the people that have come in. We held a community barbecue last Saturday, a week today. We sent invitations out to all the residents associations and community organizations, business improvement associations, and we had, I don't know, probably 400 people that came to our barbecue. It was very interesting, a really interesting mix of people. But the important thing was to show that this is the community's court. The day before we opened on September 10th, and on September 9th, the Vancouver Board of Trade held its first ever luncheon at Community Court, its first ever luncheon in the downtown east side, and they held it at Community Court. And they were oversubscribed, a number of people who wanted to come, there wasn't enough seats for them all. So we're opening ourselves up to the community, the business community, the residential community, and that's the way I think community courts ought to operate.